There's a Sunday afternoon. Friends are gathered around a television, shouting at the screen, jumping up when someone scores, groaning when a play falls apart. The room is thick with tension and excitement. And then there's this one person sitting quietly on the couch, scrolling through their phone, glancing up occasionally with a polite smile, but clearly somewhere else entirely. When someone asks their opinion on the game, they offer a vague comment, something neutral, and the conversation moves on without them. Or picture this. It's Monday morning at work. Colleagues are buzzing about last night's match, dissecting every decision, every moment, replaying the drama as if their lives depended on it. One person stands at the edge of the group, coffee in hand, nodding along but contributing nothing. They're not hostile. They're not trying to spoil anyone's fun. They're just not there, not in that world. From the outside, it looks like indifference, maybe even coldness. People wonder, how can you not care? Don't you feel anything when your team wins or loses? But inside, these people do feel things. They feel plenty. They're just not wired to pour their emotional energy into something that to them feels distant, scripted, beyond their control. What most people never see is that behind this quiet detachment lies a completely different relationship with excitement, meaning, and where they choose to invest their attention. And once you understand it, everything about them starts to make sense.
People who don't obsess over sports are often labeled as boring, unenthusiastic, too serious. Sometimes they're seen as snobs who think they're above it all, or as loners who don't know how to have fun. There's this quiet assumption that they're missing out on something essential, something that brings people together, and that their lack of interest is a personal failing. But that's not what's happening at all. These people aren't rejecting connection or joy. They're not incapable of passion. What they're doing is protecting something deeper, their sense of agency, their need for meaning that feels personal and earned, and their limited reserves of emotional energy. They've learned, often over many years, that pouring themselves into outcomes they can't influence leaves them feeling empty rather than fulfilled. Many of them grew up in environments where sports weren't the center of family life. Maybe their parents didn't watch games, or the people around them valued other things, books, music, building things with their hands, long conversations. So the habit never formed. The neural pathways that connect competition on a screen to personal identity never got carved deep. And as they moved through adolescence and adulthood, they noticed something. When others got swept up in the highs and lows of a season, they felt nothing, not because they were cold, but because their emotional system had learned to invest elsewhere. Over time, this became part of how they navigate the world. They started to recognize that their attention is finite, precious, and that they feel most alive when they direct it toward things they can touch, shape, or deeply understand. Sports, for them, sit on the other side of a line. They're spectacle, not substance, entertainment for others, but not a source of meaning for them. And once that pattern solidified, it became a quiet filter through which they experience social life, relationships, and even their own identity.
These people walk through life with a distinct relationship to where they place their emotional weight. It shows up in small moments, in the choices they make about what deserves their focus, and in the quiet ways they protect their inner world from what feels like noise. Imagine someone sitting in a bar during a championship game. The entire room erupts when a goal is scored. Bodies leap from chairs, hands slam tables, strangers hug each other. And this person feels a flicker of curiosity, maybe even a smile at the collective joy around them. But inside, there's no surge, no adrenaline. They watch the celebration like an anthropologist, observing a ritual they respect but don't participate in. Internally, they're thinking, I'm glad they're happy, but I don't understand why this matters so much. They're not judging. They're genuinely puzzled by the intensity, because for them, Excitement has always come from things they can control or create: finishing a project, solving a problem, having a breakthrough, and understanding something complex. Watching strangers play a game in a stadium somewhere far away doesn't trigger that same reward. Their brain has learned to reserve its dopamine for personal victories, not borrowed ones. Then there's the way they handle social pressure. A coworker invites them to a Super Bowl party. They know it's meant as a friendly gesture, an invitation into the group, but they also know what the evening will be: hours of watching something they don't care about, pretending to react at the right moments, feeling like an outsider in a room full of insiders. So they decline, gently. They offer an excuse, something vague. And later, alone, they feel a small pang of guilt. Am I being difficult? Am I shutting people out? But then they remember past attempts, times they forced themselves to sit through games to fit in, and how exhausted they felt afterward, how fake it all seemed. They've learned that protecting their energy isn't selfish, it's survival. In their earlier years, maybe in high school or college, they tried harder to blend in. They showed up, they cheered when others cheered, but it always felt like acting. And over time, they gave themselves permission to stop performing. Consider how they experience identity. Most people build part of their sense of self around the teams they support. Wearing a jersey isn't just fashion, it's tribal belonging, a way to say, this is who I am, these are my people. But for those who don't obsess over sports, identity comes from elsewhere, from the skills they've developed, from the ideas they hold, from the relationships they've nurtured one-on-one. When someone asks them, "Who's your team?" and they shrug and say, "I don't really follow sports," there's often an awkward silence. The other person doesn't know where to go from there. And in that silence, these people feel a familiar isolation. They've spent years realizing that a huge chunk of social bonding, especially among men, revolves around shared allegiance to teams. And because they don't have that, they've had to find other ways to connect. They've become good at asking questions, at listening, at finding common ground in work, hobbies, or humor. But there's always this invisible barrier in certain spaces, this sense that they're missing a password everyone else was given. There's also the way they process randomness and control. Sports are full of unpredictability. A referee's call can change everything. An injury in the final minutes can destroy a season. And for people who don't obsess over sports, that randomness feels unbearable to invest in emotionally. They've learned, often through painful experiences in other areas of life, that they need to focus their energy on things where their effort makes a difference. Maybe they grew up in unstable environments where they couldn't control much, and as a result, they became hyper-focused on the few things they could shape. Or maybe they just have a temperament that craves agency. Either way, sitting on a couch hoping a stranger makes a shot feels like giving away power. It feels passive. They'd rather spend that same 2 hours learning something, building something, or connecting with someone face-to-face where their presence matters. Then there's how they relate to tribalism itself. Sports fandom is, at its core, about belonging to a group, defending that group, feeling united in victory and defeat. But these people often have a complicated relationship with group identity. They've seen how tribalism can turn ugly, the fights, the bitterness, the way people let the outcome of a game ruin their whole weekend. They've watched friends become genuinely angry over a loss, and they've thought, why give something that much power over you? It's not that they're above emotion. They feel intensely about things, but they've learned to be selective, to protect themselves from investing in dramas they can't influence. In childhood, maybe they were the kid who didn't fit neatly into cliques, who observed groups from a slight distance, and that position taught them to be wary of losing themselves in collective emotion. They value their autonomy too much. Finally, there's the way they experience leisure and rest. For many people, watching sports is how they unwind. It's an escape. It's a way to shut off the thinking mind and just react. But for those who don't obsess over sports, that kind of passive consumption doesn't feel restful. It feels like wasted time. When they have a free afternoon, They want to do something that leaves them feeling enriched, reading a book that changes how they see the world, taking a walk that clears their head, working on a creative project that gives them a sense of accomplishment. They've realized that their version of relaxation involves active engagement, not passive watching. And once they understood that about themselves, sitting through a 3-hour game started to feel like a form of mild torture, not because the game is bad, but because it's simply not how their mind recharges. This way of moving through the world shapes their relationships in profound ways. Friendships, for them, tend to form around shared interests that feel more personal, more chosen. They bond over conversations that go deep, over projects they collaborate on, over mutual respect for each other's skills and perspectives. But they often struggle in group settings where sports are the social glue. Office gatherings during playoff season, family reunions where the game is always on in the background, casual hangouts that revolve around watch parties. These spaces can feel alienating. They show up, they participate as best they can, but there's always this subtle sense of being on the outside. And over time, some of them stop showing up as much, not out of bitterness, but out of self-preservation. They've learned that constantly pretending to care about something drains them, and they'd rather invest their social energy in spaces where they can be fully themselves. In romantic relationships, this difference can create unexpected friction. If their partner is deeply into sports, there's a recurring tension. The partner wants to share their excitement, wants them to sit and watch together, wants that moment of joint celebration when their team wins. But these people can't manufacture enthusiasm. They try. They sit down, they ask questions, they nod along, but their partner can feel the absence of genuine investment, and it stings a little. Why can't you just enjoy this with me? And they don't have a good answer because the truth, I don't find meaning in this, sounds harsher than it is. So they learn to compromise. They give their partner space to enjoy games with friends. They show interest in other ways, asking about the stakes, the storylines, the players. But they also set boundaries, carving out time for the things that feed their own spirit. The healthiest relationships are the ones where both people understand that passion doesn't have to be shared in every domain, that love can exist alongside different sources of joy. When it comes to stress and uncertainty, these people have developed their own coping mechanisms, and they're often remarkably self-reliant. Because they don't use sports as an emotional outlet or a distraction, they've had to find other ways to manage anxiety and overwhelm. Some turn to physical activity that feels personal, running alone, hiking, yoga, lifting weights in a quiet gym. Others channel stress into creative work or problem solving, finding relief in the act of making progress on something tangible. They've learned that they feel most stable when they're actively engaging with their challenges rather than escaping into spectacle. This makes them resilient in certain ways. They don't need external drama to process their emotions. But it can also make them appear overly serious or isolated. Friends sometimes worry about them, wondering if they ever just let loose. And the truth is, they do. They let loose in their own ways. But those ways are quieter, more internal, harder to see from the outside. Their sense of identity in the modern world is complicated. In a culture that celebrates shared spectacle, that builds entire industries around collective viewing experiences, they can feel like relics from another time, or like they're missing a gene everyone else has. Social media amplifies this. During major sporting events, their feeds explode with posts, reactions, memes, hot takes. Everyone is talking about the same thing, feeling connected through that shared focus, and they scroll past it all, feeling a strange mix of indifference and loneliness. They're not against other people's joy, but they're acutely aware that they don't have access to this particular form of communal belonging. Over the years, this has shaped how they see themselves, as observers, as people who stand slightly apart, as individuals who've had to build meaning in more solitary, deliberate ways. Yet, there's a quiet strength in this position. These people often develop a clearer sense of what actually matters to them
because they haven't outsourced their emotional highs and lows to external events. They know what makes them come alive, what fills them with purpose, and they protect that fiercely. They're less swayed by hype, less vulnerable to the emotional manipulation that comes with being deeply invested in outcomes they can't control. In relationships and workplaces, they bring a steadying presence. When everyone else is swept up in the drama of the moment, they remain grounded, focused on what's real and actionable. They're the ones who ask the practical questions, who remind others that there's a world beyond the game, who hold space for different kinds of conversation. They also offer something valuable to the people around them, permission to opt out. In a world that often feels like it demands constant enthusiasm for the same things everyone else cares about, they model a different way of being. They show that it's okay to have your own rhythm, your own sources of meaning, even if they don't align with the mainstream. And for others who feel similarly, but haven't given themselves permission to admit it, seeing someone unapologetically indifferent to sports can be quietly liberating.
If you're someone who doesn't obsess over sports, I want you to know that there's nothing wrong with you. You're not missing a piece. You're not broken or cold or incapable of passion. You've simply learned to place your emotional energy elsewhere, in places that feel more personal, more within your control, more aligned with who you actually are. Your indifference isn't a deficit, it's a boundary. It's a choice, whether conscious or not, to protect your attention and invest it in things that genuinely matter to you. The world will keep asking you to care about games, to join in the collective fervor, to prove your enthusiasm for outcomes that have nothing to do with your life. And sometimes you'll feel the pressure to perform, to fake it so you don't seem difficult or distant. But you don't owe anyone that performance. You're allowed to sit quietly on the sidelines. You're allowed to say, "That's just not my thing," without apology or explanation. You're allowed to find your meaning in the pages of books, in the rhythm of your own projects, in conversations that go deep, in the small victories you build with your own hands. And for those who do love sports, who feel that electric connection to their team, understanding these people matters. They're not rejecting you or your joy. They're not trying to diminish what sports mean to you. They're just wired differently. They've walked a different path, shaped by different experiences, and they've arrived at a place where their energy flows in other directions. When you stop seeing their disinterest as a personal slight and start seeing it as a legitimate difference in how people find meaning, something shifts. The friendship deepens. The relationship becomes more honest. You both get to be yourselves without one of you always feeling like an outsider. What these people teach us is that passion doesn't have to look the same for everyone, that community can be built around 1,000 different things, not just the ones that dominate the cultural conversation, that it's okay to opt out of the noise and find your own quiet corner of the world where you feel fully alive. They remind us that investing in what you can control, in what directly touches your life, isn't selfish or cold. It's a form of wisdom. It's a way of living that honors your limits and your truths. So if this resonates with you, if you've spent years feeling like you're the only one who doesn't get the hype, know that you're not alone. There are others out there, quietly moving through the same spaces, protecting the same boundaries, finding meaning in the same understated ways. And maybe in recognizing each other, there's a different kind of belonging, one that doesn't require cheering for the same team, but simply seeing and respecting each other's path. If this video helped you feel a little more understood, drop a comment below and share your experience. What do people misunderstand about you when it comes to sports? And if you want more deep dives into the hidden psychology behind the way we live, go ahead and subscribe. There's so much more to explore together.